Cool. Thank you, everybody, for coming today to the first weekly Clarity Twitter space. Today, we're going to be talking with Craig at GoKey. So today, we're just going to be talking about Clarity, the DAO tooling protocol that we're building, GoKey, Craig's real estate project on Cardano, a little bit about some catalyst proposals, and then some more about DAOs and open it up for some questions. I'll be kind of moderating this space, so if at any point you have something you'd like to add, any questions, comments, anything, please go ahead and raise your hand and I'll get you worked up as a speaker. Other than that, I'm gonna throw it over to Logan to talk a little more about Clarity.
Yeah, thanks everyone for coming. What Clarity is, it's a DAO tooling protocol for the Cardano blockchain, and essentially the idea of Clarity is to build a smart contract library wrapped in an easy to use interface so that anyone, you don't have to be a technical person, anyone that's part of your DAO community is able to participate in the DAO. Anyone is able to create a DAO, so create proposals, vote on proposals, and have these automatically interact with the treasury. So there's a treasury management aspect involved too. And we really just want to lower the barrier to entry for projects on Cardano that want to operate as these decentralized organizations to be able to do it in a non-technical way and not have to find these developers that are super expensive and not have to pay for these expensive audits. Just kind of have a place where they can come and have the tooling to build the community and operate the community as they want.
Awesome. So yeah, something that I think a lot of people can definitely use in the Cardano ecosystem. Definitely, a lot of projects are popping up and interested in operating as DAOs. One of those being GoKey, who we were able to partner with recently to join our DAO incubator, which we can talk a little more about later. But Craig, do you want to talk to us a little more about GoKey and what you guys are doing?
Yeah, man, happy to give a quick overview. Thanks, Justin. I mean, first of all, I just want to say I'm really excited about this. I come from a less technical background, primarily real estate and construction type background, but and this all reminds me a lot of like early days of websites. So like back in the early 2000s, I was learning how to build websites using tools like Microsoft Front Page and kind of trying to hack my way through HTML, CSS, and things like that. And then, like WordPress came along and I just fully embraced it. And, kind of, it was a great tool for like Web 2.0 type development and really lowered a barrier of entry for a lot of people to do a lot of really cool things. And, now WordPress powers, depending on who you ask, anywhere from like 60 to 80% of the internet. So, or at least websites. So, coming into Web3, I kind of felt like everything's kind of a lot of that same feeling, where it's not super user friendly right now. Just developing dApps and especially on Cardano right now, just because of being built on Haskell, it's not easy for a non-technical founder like myself to try to kind of implement ideas. So I've always believed that development on Cardano and really any other chain is it's going to make a big difference if it can become as easy to use as something like WordPress. For dApp developers. So super excited about that. But what GoKey is wanting to do is, we started out as an idea to build simple peer-to-peer smart contracts, just to let people have more options in how they interact in the real estate space without necessarily having to use as many intermediaries. But because of kind of some of the tooling or lack thereof right now, and because at the same time we got a lot of interest for real estate investments, all of a sudden a DAO really made sense, and it was something that I didn't think would really be possible for us anytime soon. But you guys' work in developing the Clarity protocol with MLabs is probably going to be changing the game. I mean, it's enabled us to go ahead and start a DAO and give more people access to the kind of real estate investments that they're wanting to get into. So just really excited about that and looking forward to talking more about it today and answering any kind of questions anyone has.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, what you said resonated with me so much. Just, there's all these people with ideas, and I think me and Justin. I'm Logan, by the way, just as a short introduction. Me and Justin started on this path in Cardano, and we had all these ideas of things that would be useful. But what we found is that it's really hard to build these and find developers and build this, audited infrastructure that people can use. And it's expensive, it's time consuming, then you have to get it audited, so it becomes even more expensive. And we really just wanted to make these smart contracts that can be used so that entrepreneurs like yourself, Craig, and like so many other people in the ecosystem have access to, so they can build the projects they want, just kind of as WordPress did, and allowing people to go from idea to website quickly. We want people to be able to go from idea to DAO quickly, community to DAO quickly. And we really do believe everyone should be able to build and govern communities on top of reliable, decentralized tooling. And our mission is to make that happen. Like I said, I mean, amazing ideas are all around us. And just because you're not technical, the barrier of entry is kind of too high to be able to kind of build the dream that you have. So we just want to be an enabler for people in the ecosystem to be able to create these communities and have them operate in a decentralized way, because we think it's one of the most powerful kind of concepts to come in the last decades, is this idea of communities coming together transparently, globally transparent, and being able to interact, and execute decisions in a decentralized way. It's unheard of until blockchain came around, and we think Cardano is a sustainable infrastructure to build this on top of, and we're really excited to bring these tools to all these creators that might not necessarily have the resources to start from square one.
Absolutely, man. That's awesome.
I have a question for like the test grounds for the protocol, Clarity protocol. Is it really easy to see kind of like how I can go and create kind of like a test net on WordPress? I don't want to say Docker. It's for lack of better words, I'm not technically background either, but I can create kind of like a test net before my my website. So if I create the smart contract, do you use like the Plutus testnet? And is there like a UI UX that's easily seen? So I can look at how these contracts and kind of poke and prod.
Yeah, exactly. So the Clarity protocol is going to be built underneath an easy to use kind of web platform that's going to be, just a site that you're able to go to and manage and participate in all the DAOs that you're in. And as far as there being kind of a testnet version of that, yeah. So we'll, just like other dApps and DEXs that you're seeing coming out right now, an important part of our kind of going to market process will include, a launch on testnet, let you guys test it out and experiment with, the features that we're working on, and then eventually, host it on mainnet. But yeah, going forward, I think that we would definitely like to keep that testnet version alive to allow you to do, those kind of operations in a test environment. Awesome. And for those people who are just kind of joining in right now, feel free to raise your hand and request speaker at any point, and we'll pull you up and let you fire away. So if anybody else has any questions right now, feel free to raise your hand. Otherwise, we can talk a little bit more about some Catalyst proposals that we have, and Logan can chat about that.
Yeah. So the Catalyst proposals are pinned at the top. The tweet starts with "Help us continue our core development," and there's two Catalyst proposals that we have in this round that are going towards the Clarity protocol if we are lucky enough to win the vote. And the first one is a DAO incubator. I'm personally really excited about this. The goal behind this Catalyst proposal is to help grow and fund communities within Cardano that want to eventually operate as on-chain DAOs, but the tooling just isn't there yet. So the idea is to make a cohort or partner with 10 communities that, like I said, want to eventually become on-chain DAOs, and just get them in a situation where they can talk to these other communities, and we can provide them with kind of basic DAO tooling to start. And as we build this on-chain infrastructure, roll it out to them first, and just create this tight feedback loop so that we can make sure that we're building a product that the community really wants. So essentially, what this incubator does is it helps to grow and fund projects that want to become on-chain DAOs. And then I see a hand up. So before I talk about the next one, I will. Pyra, go ahead.
No, I apologize. I was just asking. I was raising my hand to ask a question about how the on like the actual product works for DAOs. Like I was wondering if it's more of like a plug and play dashboard for people doing DAOs, and the legal side as well. Do you guys plan on having a legal side, or at least like not a legal, obviously not a legal side, but something that like how you could do your taxes on like tax free, something like that, and it just kind of gives you a blurb like you could do this such and such for something easy that the end user can understand when plugging their DAO smart contracts, or if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. What I would say is essentially what we're doing is we're turning Plutus smart contracts, kind of turning them into templates that we're able to turn into easy to use online forms. So there's certain variables in a smart contract that a DAO would want to customize. So kind of the governance rules is one. So you'd go on, you'd fill out a simple online form, you'd say, what your DAO name is, what the token that governs the DAO is, or maybe you don't have a token yet and you want to make one. And then you might want to fill in the blank that is for the threshold for a proposal passing. And this can be voted on later, but you can make it say 51% or 66%. And you can plug it in that way. So it's really just a library of Plutus smart contract templates that serve as DAO infrastructure. And as far as like the legal side of things, that's not in version 1, at least in the plans, but this is exactly why we have these spaces, to get these ideas and hear what the community might want to have in this kind of smart contract enabled DApp, to make it a really useful tool. Because that's a big kind of gray area, is the legality of DAOs. So that might be something we need to take a closer look at. So I appreciate you bringing that up. So I can keep talking. So the DAO incubator, we are really looking for communities to partner with that are interested in using kind of this easy to use no code tooling for their community to manage their proposals and manage their treasuries. So if you are interested, there's another pinned tweet at the top. It's the third one. So you can scan that code and just tell us a little bit about your project, and we can have a conversation about how we might have some synergies. And then the other proposal that we have out is an open smart contract library. So really what we're trying to do with this DAO tooling protocol is create strong incentives to financially incentivize collaboration and sharing within the Cardano ecosystem. So we want to create a platform that allows Cardano developers to upload smart contracts and earn profit when other developers or projects use them. So when we go to market, we're going to have, there's a lot of different things that a lot of different DAOs need. And there might be one project that wants to implement a quadratic voting system. And they might make that smart contract, and it's very useful to them, but it could also be very useful to a lot of other DAO communities. So the purpose of this proposal is to enable anyone to be able to submit smart contracts to the Clarity protocol so that anyone can use them. And when someone uses the smart contract, the developer is identified and they are automatically part of the profit sharing mechanism of the DAO tooling protocol. So this goes to say really what we want Clarity protocol to be is a living and breathing smart contract library that's community driven. And if you create a smart contract that everyone wants to use, then you are financially incentivized to share it. Because I think that's kind of the ethos of the Cardano ecosystem is the more we collaborate, the more we share, the better things will become and the faster we'll progress. So that's really the idea behind that proposal.
Awesome, and like we mentioned earlier, Craig and GoKey are actually one of the first teams to join the DAO Incubator that Logan talked about. So Craig, do you want to maybe talk a little bit more about that and what that's going to enable GoKey to be able to do?
Yeah, sure. I mean, first of all, I would follow up with on what Logan said about the second proposal. I mean, I think what's really cool when you read both of them, like it's pretty easy to see how they can like work together over time. So like, and kind of like leverage off each other. So it's kind of like the two proposals are like together more valuable than the sum of their parts. I mean, they're each very cool in their own way, but like using them together, like to me seems like a really powerful advancement. But in terms of the GoKey DAO, we decided to do that recently. Like I mentioned, we've had a lot of like interest in real estate investment type products and deals, and we've been approached by so many people that are trying to do these like really unique things that are not, you don't just necessarily take them to the bank, like with your deal all put together. Like we've been approached by people that wanted to do potentially bring on chain like an income producing vineyard or a submerged piece of property that is built to be a mooring for houseboats in the Pacific Northwest. We've been approached by people who wanted to do this like kind of resort on a lake that kind of was a real IRL duplicate of a metaverse project. And all these were like just fascinating ideas that don't fit cleanly in if you take that to your bank, they're just going to be what the fuck, like get out of here. So being able to have the potential to start seriously considering doing projects like that and to have them be community owned and managed is just a fascinating leap in technology and just community advancement. I mean, I guess for lack of a better term, but it's really cool for us because like, my background, and when you look at these types of projects, you start trying to see how they might work within the framework of like a normal like securities offering or something like that. And maybe even like looking at it from the perspective of like, well, we could tokenize it and issue securities tokens. And, that kind of stuff is cool, but it's just not super interesting in 2022 to me. So, and it's pretty limiting on what you can do and who can be involved. So, GoKey started out with a mission, and we're still on this mission to help anyone who wants to have access to property ownership. And, originally the idea was like, really built around the idea that people of average means right now have a really hard time trying to like buy their first home. So we start thinking outside the box of all these different models that that could be implemented, things like owner financing, you know, and lease purchase type options, things that we wanted to do with these kind of peer-to-peer smart contracts. But something that was always missing is like, okay, how do you work with like renters? Like, let's say you have a large apartment complex. Like, how do you help them get some skin in the game? You know, like in this day and age, does it make sense for a renter to rent somewhere for like 10 years, 5 years, whatever, and like literally walk away with nothing to show for it financially, when they're, you know, they're obviously adding value to the property by nature of being a tenant, but they're also, you know, they're if they're a good renter and a good community member, they're adding value to their communities, they're supporting local businesses and things like that. So they should be able to have some skin in the game, so to speak. So what's really cool about a DAO is, like, you know, let's say if GoKey were to have a community-owned DAO that owns a 10 to 20 unit apartment complex, or maybe larger in the future, our tenants could even be members of the DAO also. So that's like a huge game changer. And it's kind of one of those things where it's like, we want to do that because, you know, we feel like fundamentally it's like the morally right thing to do, but also because of the way everything's advancing, like if we don't do it, someone else is probably going to. And I think we're probably going to see more and more of that in the future, and more demand from occupants of apartment complexes, so to speak, who are asking for that. Like, and if a property owner doesn't want to kind of reward the loyalty of their tenants that way, then I will find one who will. So, and that's just one example of like the pretty fascinating things that could be done with DAOs. And you know,
Yeah.
I could go on.
I could go on and on.
Well,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
I just want to, like, that's so cool. Like GoKey, I like my head's spinning with like all these things that you could do for homes. I know underwriting, like I know like a big issue in a lot of like low income areas is like people end up like 10 people on one loan, and then you know it goes down the list of, you know, if someone doesn't pay, etc. And I you know, to me that is like taking advantage of people who can't afford it. But is there a way to have like a public subsidized home, like or there obviously is, but is that like in the future that you see like a public subsidized home that allows you to fractionalize the rent to kind of like lower the rent fee for the people who own the home? Like I don't want to call it, it's not like necessarily charity, but I imagine people who own homes and they can't afford it, they can lease out like 33% of their home, and other people are paying into the equity of the home, owning a share of a home, but not necessarily paying, you know, like they're paying their share of that home under a smart contract, which ultimately for the family that lives in that home pays a lower threshold for renting. Is that something that you see in the future?
You know, we haven't looked at like a model specifically like that, but I mean, I would say like I think the possibilities are only limited by our imaginations in a lot of ways. That being said, you know, when we start thinking about the idea of GoKey and like how do you really get the idea out there and get people to start adopting it, and how do you scale it? One of our earliest thoughts, and it's still absolutely on the roadmap, is to start partnering with like housing organizations. And, you know, that can be anything from, you know, almost every major city and a lot of communities have like housing authorities, and some are publicly funded, some get federal money. And man, they're just looking for solutions in a lot of ways. I mean, you know, I think they've exhausted a lot of possibilities in terms of like, you know, let's just get taxpayer money and throw it at housing. You know, like that can only really get you so far. You really have to start thinking outside the box in terms of like not just the dollars and cents, but like the timing of payments and how you can manage down payments and how you can collateralize certain things, and just getting really creative on a large scale. But I always think about the example of like mountain communities right now. So I spent a lot of time in Colorado in the mountains and in Denver. Both types of markets are having like extreme housing crises, and it's to the point where like say towns up in the mountains who their wintertime economies mostly revolve around like the ski industry. Just for example, like their workforce can't afford to live there anymore, and it's causing like severe economic problems, not just for the residents of the town and the people that work there, but for the entire community, because you can't provide the goods and services. So there are a lot of people trying to figure these things out, and I think they are going to make really good partners in the future, because they're already trying to think of like innovative solutions to help people buy homes. Quick example, like Eagle County, Colorado, where Vail is. They and other counties have this as well, but they have these programs where you can, if you're a resident, you can get deed restricted housing. So like you can buy a house using some special pool of funds, but you can't just like buy it inexpensively and sell it at market rate. Like it's called deed restricted housing. So basically your upside is limited to like 3%. So basically it helps you have some skin in the game, but you still don't get to take advantage of the full market value and equity that you would normally be building in a property. But I just say that just to say, just to illustrate how far people are going to try to come up with solutions. So I feel like if you take all the solutions that are on the table between tax funded projects, deed restricted housing, private nonprofit funds that are trying to solve the problem, and mix in something like GoKey, then all of a sudden you have a lot more bullets at your disposal to try to tackle the problem.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating to me. I remember being at the Cardano Summit last year, and Frederick Griegard was talking, who's the CEO of the Cardano Foundation, and he said, in the future, there will be blockchain-enabled companies and not blockchain-enabled companies, and blockchain-enabled companies will always win. And that really stuck with me. And the reason I think he's right is because, Craig comes from a construction and real estate background. He's thinking about how companies can exist on the blockchain to enhance real estate. I come from a sports background. I used to be a professional soccer player, and I think of how DAOs can optimize fan experiences. I know Justin, he comes from like a music background, and he thinks there's a lot of different ways that DAOs and blockchain can seep their way into the music industry. And I just think it's fascinating how no matter where you come from, no matter what kind of angle you're taking, there's certain ways that blockchain technology can just push power to the edges and create innovation in that way. And I think it's really exciting in that sense. So, I mean, just to talk about another idea for DAO is, well, with Clarity, what we want to do is create a platform where anyone is able to have these ideas and go out and try to make it happen. For me, I want to use this protocol to find a fan base that wants to buy a minority stake in a sports team. And then this fan base will have direct access to vote on things like the jersey designs for next year, the charities that the team donates to, the songs that play before the game, have a portional say in, who the next manager of the team is. I think that, there's so many different applications for blockchain technology and DAOs to make the world a better place. And there's so many different ideas around that, really the goal of the Clarity protocol is to be a sandbox so that people can create these communities and organizations that they want to, and then have the tooling to be able to make it happen. But yeah, I think, I encourage people to come up and join in the conversation and ask questions. We really just like to chat about DAOs and blockchain and real estate and whatever, and we're super happy that so many people showed up to listen.
Yeah, I think it's so cool that in your Discord you have the DAO think tank where people can just throw out different ideas for DAOs, and people can just meeting of the minds and throw out just fascinating ideas. And I haven't heard anything yet that doesn't seem possible.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. I mean, I'm definitely biased, but I think, whether you know how the internet works or not, everyone's using it on a day-to-day basis. And I think that in the future, whether you know how blockchain works or not, you're going to be using it, whether you know it or not. And I think we're kind of in an early point of that, but it's these discussions and these kind of think tanks where ideas start to form and they become a little more real and real by the day after these conversations happen. And then, people join the team and push it a little further. And I think that's how amazing things happen is people just start collaborating. So that is my favorite channel.
Yeah, I heard some great ideas already. Did you see my link about a DAO wanting to buy the Denver Broncos?
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of DAOs popping up to buy sports franchises.
Yeah. Well,
it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah. It's crazy what they're going for.
We've got to find an owner that's not so greedy.
Yeah.
Pace, go ahead, man.
Space Wizard, but yeah, it's okay.
Space
I
Wizard.
just love what you guys are saying. First off, I'm following GoKey, invested definitely. I haven't heard of you guys Clarity yet, but definitely interested in what you guys are doing. You guys are talking about like just the housing market in Colorado and stuff, and obviously that's happening everywhere. Like I'm in Arizona, so I'm seeing it here too, with all of half of California moving over here. But I kind of just didn't even like really think about like the possibility of like fractional ownership of houses. So I guess that would be my first question, but like how that would work, or if that's even a possibility, because I know you guys are also trying to do like renting through the blockchain too. So I'm still kind of trying to wrap my head around, because I was telling some people about GoKey, and like some people that just don't really understand blockchain are like, how like there still has to be some like, because if you could just put an NFT, a house as an NFT, right? Like you just get the you still, the serious question was like, you still have to go through some sort of like notoriety or some sort of regular government regulations. I'm just kind of, I guess my second question would be like, what could it just all be done on chain, or what type of like zoning stuff or actually like has to be done in that regard? So I know it's kind of a lot of a question.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just to put it simply, I think, I guess first of all, like, if you talk about like a single family home, like GoKey is not necessarily proposing to fractionalize a single family home. There are projects out there where they are fractionalizing the ownership interests of a home, and like investors can buy a fraction and receive kind of a pro rata share of the revenue thrown off by the rental. What GoKey, and this is probably more focused on like our peer-to-peer smart contracts that we want to implement a little bit later down the road. But people get really caught up in like the price of housing. Let's say, well, in the United States, on average, homes went up like 20% last year, which is a lot. But what doesn't get talked about is kind of the other part of the equation. So like when you buy something, you're buying it like kind of contingent on like a price and terms, right? And so we talk about the price all the time, but we never really talk about the terms. So by that, I mean, just a real simple example. Let's say you have an opportunity to buy a house for $400,000, but you have to put down 10%. So you have to come up with $40,000 fiat, right? A lot of times that's the barrier. It's not necessarily the overall purchase price and the monthly payment for a lot of people. So what if, just an example, what if you pay $410,000 for the house, but you pay only 5% down or less? technically, yeah, you're paying more, but all of a sudden maybe you have access to actually acquiring ownership that you wouldn't have been able to before, because if you have to wait another year or two until you have $40,000 saved up for a down payment, then maybe by that time the price of the house is 480,000. So like you're just kind of getting further and further behind. So kind of the idea with GoKey is to take a couple of really old school types of arrangements, like primarily like owner financing, where let's say you're buying a house from someone that's maybe rented it for a long time, and they don't owe anything on it, and they can just finance you directly, and they can finance you. And when it comes time to transfer title, then yeah, you do still have to go to the courthouse, at least until some time in the future where all the legal agencies and the counties in the United States have all this on chain, which by the way people are working on. So but
Right, it's not that far off. Like some people, I feel like the person that was questioning the whole concept just can't wrap their head around NFTs. So I guess I shouldn't even be. If you can't understand that like I totally agree that agencies will eventually ship. But I mean, granted, it's going to take time. But
yeah, that's kind of a fundamental understanding I think one would need to have first. But to Logan's point earlier, like GoKey's goal is to kind of communicate what we're doing in a way that someone doesn't necessarily need to know it's on a blockchain or need to know it's managed by a smart contract. They just need to know that it works and it's secure. Of course, we want to make the details possible to access and to understand for people who want to dig deeper into the technology and the underlying tech of how everything works. But I mean, coming up with GoKey, and especially when we're doing some of like our early branding exercises and trying to figure out how we were going to communicate it to the public, we kind of did some early research, and like most people don't really care that it's on chain or whatever. They just want to know like, hey, is this a tool I can use to access property ownership that I wouldn't otherwise be able to have access to? But we can go offline sometime, and I'm happy to tell you all about it, or your friend as well. So just let me know.
Oh yeah, man, I'm all about it. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
You bet.
But I don't know if you guys are like trying to close on the space for questions, but clarity, I just was kind of thinking the other day about the DAOs and the Cardano ecosystem. It's interesting. I just saw the space today that you guys are creating tooling for DAOs, because I was literally just talking to some people on Twitter that like I guess my tweet was like I don't know if DAOs should be motivated for profits, but for governance instead. I just feel like every DAO, for the most part, in Cardano is like NFT related to get hoard like different NFTs and stuff, So I'm just wondering what your guys' thoughts is. Obviously, every business needs to focus on profits, so it's like I get that, but also like the actual like to actually be building stuff on chain, like so you guys are like, as far as I could tell, one of the first, if not, there's a handful of people trying to do that. So know your guys' kind of thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think that there's a wide variety of what a DAO can be used for. Obviously, some DAOs are inherently going to be more charitable. Maybe they were started around a charitable cause or something like that, and some are going to be more profit focused, like an investment club. And I think that it's fine for both of those to coexist, and it's really cool that the blockchain allows it creates this platform where these two completely different goals can both be achieved through DAOs, just because of how transparent they can be. I think that that's really powerful. So as part of kind of the DAO incubator that we're starting, we want to accept not only profit motivated DAOs, but also charitable DAOs. And we really want to make sure that, no matter what kind of the end goal of the DAO is or what the motivating factor is, we're providing the tooling that's going to allow people to, create and manage these DAOs.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to talk about. I think, like Justin said, there's so many different use cases for DAOs, and I think just kind of a fact of, I don't know, life is money flows where value is created, and I think with decentralized technology, value is created in a new way. It has the ability to democratize ownership in things that are bringing real value. And I mean, it's my opinion that DAOs are able to create better value than, say, more equitable value than, say, a big tech company is, because you're directly part of the ownership group involved within the protocol that you care about. And I don't know what the world will look like, but I really do think that there's going to be all different types of DAOs. Some will be DAOs that bring so much value to the people that play a part in it that they will be, kind of profit reaping protocols. But there's going to be some DAOs that are charitable, and people join into them because they think they're creating good in the world and they're not worried about making money. So yeah, I think, just as some companies are nonprofits, some DAOs will be nonprofits. It's really just a different form of a company. I think there's this metaphor that I hear oftentimes is DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization, is just the LLCs of organizations and communities that want to exist and communicate and execute decisions on the blockchain.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I was also going to say that, like, you guys are 100% right on that. Whether or not it's profit or not, is definitely the tooling or the DAOs that are the gateway to a whole bunch of different potentials in this ecosystem. But final question, I'll step down. Just slipping my mind right now, but pretty much, yeah. So, like, we were talking about how it's I feel like most of the DAOs right now currently on Cardano are using Web 2 tech. Like, I feel like truly to be autonomous needs to be on chain. I haven't really seen too many DAOs yet that they're building all through Discord and stuff. But if like it actually gets on chain and it's actually truly like a decentralized governance, I haven't quite seen everything is on the DAO. Says it's a DAO. I'm not saying you guys. I'm just talking about particular projects, but it's all through Discord, which is still using Web 2 tech, So, I mean, if you guys are pushing the envelope to get it on chain, I mean, I'm all for it.
Yeah, we are pushing that envelope because, I mean, that's what we're seeing in the Cardano ecosystem. Is it's possible to be an on-chain DAO, but it involves using terminal commands to cast your vote, and it's a horrible user experience. And then on the other side of the spectrum is like what you're saying. It's kind of more centralized solutions like Discord and using a Discord bot to verify ownership of NFTs in a wallet. And then these DAOs have votes, and this is like it is a DAO, but it's not a true DAO, in my opinion. So we are pushing to be able to enable these communities that operate these Discord DAOs to put their operations on chain, because I think that's the direction that these communities want to go, but the ecosystem is lacking the tooling.
Yeah, most. Thank you guys for your time. Love what you guys are doing. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for your questions, man. We appreciate it. ZygoMeb, I see you jumped up. If you have anything to say, feel free to unmute and shoot.
Yeah, I was having an audio issue for a moment there. So hi everyone. I just wanted to mention, as somebody who participates, if nominally these days in DAOs on Cardano, but it is possible to cast on-chain votes. It is a limited process, but it doesn't require using CLI. The way it is done, it can be done, is through a very similar method that SundaeSwap used for their votes. It is very simple, very straightforward, and all it requires is sending a token to yourself with some attached either metadata, making it even simpler and more extensible, or as they did originally, and encoding it into decimal points of the ADA sent to yourself. And obviously, I'm looking forward to more tools and improving the experience, but it is possible. Now, I'm looking forward mostly to tools that will improve the voting process for on-chain actions. That is super important and where Cardano is lacking. But for off-chain executable actions, there are possible solutions already here. It's just what I wanted to mention.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's super valuable feedback, and I think as much as we can get on chain, obviously the better. Like you're saying, we don't want even just the voting to be what's on chain, but we want kind of the whole downstream effects of the voting to all be on chain as much as possible, especially for scripts that would involve kind of treasury spending or something like that. So basically what we're trying to enable here is pure script management of these organizations. So that involves script treasury management and things like that. So not relying on human intervention, and like you're saying, the more that you can decentralize these things, I think the better.
Yeah, certainly. But there are limits, of course, to how much it can be decentralized. Bottom line is some responsibility needs to be taken by people in order for them to be, efficient. Yeah, but that's a whole discussion about DAOs we could get into. The way Yearn does it, I would personally say, is the most exemplary.
How do they do it? Do they use like some sort of like a proxy voting system?
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, that's like Justin said, it's super valuable, things to know. And I think we're trying to strike the balance between being very user friendly and getting mostly on chain. Cody, you just hopped up. If you have a question to ask, feel free to go.
Yeah, thank you guys. This has been very illuminating. I have a two-part question or just comment or maybe things to think about. Number one, the state, local, and federal governments, I think that they're going to be one of the biggest hills to have to climb over in a lot of the true efficiencies and adoptions, especially with regard to streamlining property ownership or transference of property ownership. So if there was anybody that had comment or knowledge maybe about the specifics of particular jurisdictions that are more positive. I know Wyoming is one of the more positive crypto states. And then the second part is the governance portion of the Cardano roadmap. Having not studied that super closely, I sort of was under the assumption, which what happens when you assume, that there would be some formal open sourcing of the tooling they build for the overall governance structure that could be taken and used. Is that not the case, or are you guys just out in front of that potentially? If that makes any sense.
Yeah, I don't know much about the state, local, and federal governments, but to talk about the latter part of the two-pronged question, I think that is on the roadmap, and what we are planning to do. I don't know if you guys have heard of Agora. It is a governance module that Liquid Labs is making and open sourcing. We're planning to use that kind of as the bottom Legos of this DAO tooling infrastructure that we're building, and then building features on top of that, and maybe other smart contracts to enhance that module. And that's kind of our plan for that. But in terms of IOG releasing governance stuff, I'm not too sure if that's happening or when it is happening.
I can comment on the kind of the jurisdictional rules around real estate transfers. I mean, if you like, I mean, kind of general comment is GoKey's kind of, well, let me back up, I guess. If you think of the real estate industry and all the activities that happen within it, whether it's, I mean, there are transfers, obviously, when people buy and sell, but there are also a lot of things that happen around real estate, like leasing, options to buy. There's different types of financing. There's first mortgages, second mortgages, home equity lines of credit, all types of financial activity that happens in the real estate space. And when you really look at it, a huge percentage of that doesn't necessarily involve a title transfer. It's important stuff, and it needs to be managed by well put together contracts, whether they're smart contracts or just paper contracts. But that's kind of where GoKey is working. Like we realize, like a lot of the news you hear about tokenized real estate right now is like, okay, this company created an NFT and they did a transfer of the NFT representing a house. So like in our mind, like that's the most simplistic thing you could probably do with like a blockchain type transaction. We're really focused in on all those other spaces where there can be a value added for all parties involved that don't necessarily involve a transfer. I mean, that being said, though, at some point, if you're in a smart contract with a seller who is owner financing you, at some point, both parties are going to fulfill their obligations and there will be a title transfer. And we recognize that right now, we could sure send over the NFT to the new owner and that's fun. But, we all understand that we're still going to have to go and do the old school process of signing over the paperwork and getting it notarized or whatever is required in each individual institution or jurisdiction. So, which in the United States, it's mostly at the county level. So, but it does help, if you're in a state that does recognize smart contracts as, having standing in court. But there's a growing number of those every year. So that's something that's coming.
I think all of this is very useful and essential for the development and adoption of the technology. Somebody has got to, not one person, I mean, there's going to have to be kind of a wave of us, but we have got to get people in governmental roles that understand this technology well enough to actually start to push the narrative in the direction where the efficiency, cost savings, whatever media marketing is needed has got to get broadcast, that this technology is not scary. And even though it may eliminate many of the idiotic redundancies that we enjoy about our government, we're going to have to fight to get those installed, because it just is the next wave of efficiency for humanity. And I think that's a critical thing that needs to be focused on.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I don't know if you've heard of a project called Landano. It's also a Catalyst funded project that is, they're working in Ghana, Africa right now to work with some local don't know if I'd call them governments because they kind of think of things a little differently. Like they're in these more like tribal societies. I mean, from my pretty limited understanding, but they are going out and they're doing these highly technical land surveys that are all digitized, and they're going to put that on the Cardano blockchain. So imagine if you do that same thing for like a county in the United States, and then all of a sudden you don't have that huge barrier. Like the blockchain recognizes that the title for that property can be legally represented by an NFT, and it can be legally transferred without the notary, without all the intermediaries in there. But it is kind of a stretch goal of GoKey to try to establish some partnerships. Hopefully we can find like a really tech forward progressive county in the United States that does kind of see this future and the writing on the wall, and we could do like a pilot project in like a small county or a part of a county, and it's going to take major collaboration with people like GoKey, other blockchain-based real estate projects, some of the larger title companies and title insurers in the United States, which we've already had some conversations, and we had a really interesting conversation with, I think, the largest title insurer in the United States already. I mean, they have like 25 engineers and they have hackathons and they want to get into blockchain, and they're going to be in a really good position to help move the needle on that as well. So I don't know how long it's going to take. I kind of have my fingers crossed that it might be one of those things that ends up happening sooner rather than later. But, in the meantime, we're just kind of going to keep trucking along and doing it our way and kind of working in parallel, almost like a layer 2 on top of the legacy layer, if, just to use kind of a metaphor we might all understand.
I'm sorry, I don't know how to turn my hand on. Can I ask one quick question there?
Yeah, go ahead.
On the topic of potentially starting with like a town or a county, just a thought would be maybe Key West, Florida. It's small enough and they know their property lines, and they're also out there as far as trying new things separate from the other states or Florida or any of that. So
awesome, thank you for that suggestion. I mean, it's really cool, and it's timely because we have so many people from the Cardano community moving to South Florida apparently.
Yeah, right, yeah. I mean, even if it was just the island of Key West, it's small enough. They know they know where their property, everything is, and so it would also be an area that would make it more in national news. It's small and manageable enough for a first start. And yeah, they're out of the box. I don't know necessarily about forward on technology, but they're definitely forward on change and difference. So
yeah, that's cool. You never know. And I mean, I think you're thinking of it the same way as me, because an island is like probably a perfect place to start, because what they do on their massive land doesn't necessarily affect the others too much, so you can kind of contain the project in a way.
Yeah, I mean, island just of Key West itself is only 2 by 4 miles, but I would definitely try and see if you can get the mooring thing done by then, figured out. There's a lot of that.
Yeah, I'm sure. And that's really interesting. Thanks for that suggestion.
Yeah, no problem. I lived down there 8 years, so all right, thanks.
Cool.
Awesome. We will keep taking questions. So if anybody else has any, feel free to request speaker and throw your hand up. ZygoMeb, go ahead.
Yeah, so it just hit me as you guys were talking about transferring ownership of properties through NFTs, that one of the biggest criticisms of blockchain in general is, well, that sometimes people send NFTs and funds to wrong addresses. And obviously there is no easy mechanism to restore a wallet. Because obviously, if the private keys are lost or a tragedy strikes and the owner of the property dies, let's say, what kind of implication would this have on GoKey's platform? That now there is an NFT that can be proven, or I mean, there would have to be some kind of process of proving that it is unrecoverable. I mean, what are your plans for that? Would you mint a secondary one?
Well, the straight answer is like we don't know exactly yet, but that is a good question. It's one of our most frequently asked questions. So, I think back to, say 30 years ago, and my grandfather was still alive. Like he had owned a piece of the family farm, and uh, it was long before the time when the county he lived in like had digital records, of course, of deeds. They maybe had a copy somewhere in a file cabinet in the courthouse, like a tiny rural area, right? So he had a copy of his deed, and he, you know, custodied that deed, and he kept it locked away. I think like in a safe deposit box at a bank, and it was probably one of the most critical documents or pieces of paper that he owned, right? So, um, what the modern time of like, your keys, your crypto is not that different. But it's still super critical, like to your point. So that is something that needs to be worked out. So, we've been talking about like how we're having to kind of operate in parallel with the legacy system now. And, it's something, in one way it's holding the industry back, but we're also kind of looking at it as an opportunity or kind of like a safety net in a way, because, until that time when you have, and this is probably years down the road, until you have, where that token does have like legal standing and you can transfer legal ownership just by exchanging the NFT. We still have that underlying legal system and the deed in the official local records. So we have some time to figure it out. And, so like if a person's wallet got hacked now and their NFT got taken out by someone with malicious intent, we could probably mint another NFT or do something, but they can still prove that they own that property by using the legacy system. So, it's kind of the upside of having kind of this transition period, is kind of the way we're looking at it. But we're continuously exploring options for how that should work in the future.
Gotcha. Thanks for answering question.
You bet.
Awesome. Well, if there's no other questions, if you do want to ask a question, feel free to hop up. But I see we've gone on about an hour now. Thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. So last chance to hop up and ask a question if you want to. Otherwise, we will wrap up the space and we'll be back next week with another cool conversation. And Craig, do you have any final words you'd like to say?
Man, I'll just reiterate my enthusiasm for being partners with you guys and what you're building. And man, I think just really exciting times ahead. So we can't wait to get the ball rolling on this aspect of GoKey. So looking forward to the next space as well. And thank you everyone for showing up and asking all the great questions. Appreciate you guys.
Yeah, definitely appreciate all the questions. I personally love having these conversations and getting asked questions that I'm not too sure of what the answer is. I think that's how we push forward. And I will shamelessly plug our Catalyst proposals. We really think they'll be good for the ecosystem. And if you do have a project or community that you eventually want to make a DAO that operates on chain, then please reach out to us. We'd love to learn more and see how we can help you out to realize your goals and dreams. So thank you everyone for showing up, and we will see you.
Take care, everybody.